Homer thinks the Mecole Hardman signing, well, I'll let him explain how meaningless it is. Homer, take it away.
Yes, Bryan Bulaga, future Hall of Famer for the Packers. I want people to know that Montana has a better chance of beating Wisconsin than Hardman has of doing anything of significance for the Packers. People need to realize in the last 2 years, he has a grand total of 214 yards receiving. So if he does something, that's great. But people need to know it's unlikely the Packers have made an acquisition or announced a signing in the last 5 years of less significance than this one, and it has nothing to do with whether they need a player at that position. Do you believe my opinion is appropriate, or have gone too far, or how would you
he
respond?
never goes too far. Yeah, never.
Please don't interrupt, sir. You're acting like Homer. You said you were not talking.
I'm not. I'm out.
We talked about this Monday, Homer, and I said it. There's no one coming in to save the wide receiver room, right? Like, they're not bringing anyone in to come save the room at this point. And I agree that this move doesn't do that. I'm not sure if he's being brought in to fill a special teams need, or he's being brought in to maybe bolster depth, or what it may be. I'm not sure if he was injured the last few years or what his role is with Kansas City. I think I saw the stat that he had like 90 yards last year for KC. He wasn't really utilized at all. So I'm not too sure what he will be used for in Green Bay, so to speak. I know he's got speed. That's great. But I mean, I don't even know the details of the contract and if he is guaranteed to even make the roster, so to speak. So I'm not, listen, I'm fine with them signing. Like, it's I hope it works out great, but I'm just not totally sure if it's like a move that could even stick through training camp. Like, is where I'm kind of going with it.
And if it's possible, he could do great. He has speed. But if he does, people need to realize this will be one of the greatest acquisitions ever in the history of �12.
Which would be the opposite of what you're saying right now.
Yeah. If it works out, then yeah.
If
then
you hire an ant to defeat a lion head-to-head and the ant wins, you've got to say that was the greatest acquisition in the history of animal fights. But the odds of that occurring are none and none. Or slim and none.
Yeah, slim and none. Yeah, I mean, listen, if it pans out, right, and he ends up playing wide out and he has a phenomenal year, and I mean,
if he gets 300 yards receiving, I would say what would be, and I will defer to the 3-time Wisconsin Sports Writer of the Year, given what he's done the last 2 years, if he has 300 yards receiving, I will give an A to �12 for this acquisition.
Well, considering that their leading receiver this past season only had 857 yards, I would say that would be good.
What would be an A for �12 on this acquisition?
4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, whether they come from a jet sweep or a return or pass catches, whatever it is. 300-ish yards from, I'll even give you yards from scrimmage.
Good.
Right? Because he's not going to be, he's going to be a gadget player for them. Bryan nailed it. He is not saving the wide receiver room. He is filling the speed void created by the absence of Christian Watson tearing his ACL in a game he wasn't going to play in until Romeo Doubs was sick. And so now they had to get someone who is fast. They got someone who's fast. Now, he has not been productive. He was durable his first 3 years. Dude was a second-round pick. The Packers had him on their board along with DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Drew Lock, and Elgton Jenkins. Ultimately, they picked Elgton Jenkins. A couple of those guys went before they picked. Hardman and DK Metcalf went after they picked. Bottom line, this is the kind of low-risk, high-reward signing that could help them if they hit on it. Are the odds in the favor of them hitting on it? No. Bryan knows this. The fact that it's not out there what the contract numbers are tell you the contract numbers are bleh. They are cheap. Because agents, if he got him a $10 million deal, the agent would be giving that to every media outlet on the planet. So it's probably close to minimum, which means, as Bryan pointed out, that they could cut him in training camp if he doesn't have what then they want to keep some sixth-round wide receiver instead on the 53. But it's low risk. It fills a need. He is not, as Bryan so eloquently put it, saving the wide receiver room. But he is a player that in Matt LaFleur's offense could have some value. And I think if we view it from that perspective, as opposed to the perspective of, boy, they could have really used Devontae Adams in that wide receiver room, then it's fine. And if he hits, great. Bryan, I don't want to keep you for 2 segments today because you're at soccer camp, and Lord knows when my daughters are in the car and I'm doing radio, the last thing they want to listen to is my voice. So I want to get to Aaron Rodgers.
Would you please let your guest determine? Maybe he's fine doing it.
Bryan, would you like to stay for 2 segments today, or would you like to get back out there and enjoy the Florida sunshine?
Well, I mean, I think we end around 11. So, I mean, if we can get 2 segments in, I mean, it just depends.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll just do 1 long segment, and then we'll run long, and we'll get you out a little bit before 11, which is kind of what I would have probably ended up doing anyway.
Thanks for asking him actually what he preferred.
Very
to do.
polite.
Yeah. You are being Homer. You're outstanding.
I'm doing my best imitation.
You got a future.
All right, Bryan. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but you played with him. And now the latest piece of intel that we've gotten after the news that the Vikings, at least for now, are out on Aaron Rodgers. This now comes from Adam Schefter. Let me read this to you. Nothing related to Minnesota has altered Aaron Rodgers' timeline. One source monitoring Rodgers' potential decision about the 2025 season, said this morning that the free agent QB still, quote, is in no rush at all. Again, if you want to read between the lines there, Bryan, that tells me he ain't excited about his options being the Steelers and the Giants. And so he's going to wait and see if J.J. McCarthy sucks this spring and the Vikings change their mind and say, hey, Aaron, upon further review, like Thornton Mellon in Back to School, put your suit on, we need you. How do you view the Aaron Rodgers waiting game right now?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems as if he, like you said, isn't thrilled to death with the options that are available. And, you know, where he's at right now, I don't blame him. You know, he did the thing with the Jets. Obviously, it didn't go very smoothly. And I've said it a million times, and I think a lot of people do. I mean, Minnesota is the best fit. And if that's the way Minnesota came out today and said that they're, you know, they plan to be with McCarthy and all that. And that's what they're going to at least try to start with in the spring. And that's where Aaron saw his best move to be. If that was the case, it would make sense for him to see, you know, maybe they don't like that during the spring, right? Maybe they see something different after the spring goes through, or maybe a week or two into training camp. And they're like, hey, you know, maybe we should give Aaron a call and see if he still would feel like doing it, because, you know, I don't know how it would go in Pittsburgh. I don't know how that team will be. You know what I mean? I'm not totally sure. And we all know the Giants. There's no way he's going there. I don't see that at all. I mean, that move makes no sense to me. So I think that one's off the table for sure. So it's really Pittsburgh and Minnesota would be my guess if I was a betting man. And the fact that it hasn't been done with Pittsburgh yet, to me, is a sign. And to me, it shows that he's really not that excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. And look, it makes sense to keep your options open. He is leaving retirement on the table. But at this point, do you believe that is just a tool, a club in his bag, to leave it out there in case it gets to the point where it's the Steelers or nothing, and if he wants to play, he wants to be able to say, well, I just wasn't sure if I could commit, so I had to go through my process, and now I'm ready. Like, we know the game he's playing here, right? And if you were, let me put it this way, if you were a member of the Vikings, we wouldn't dislike you. We've put up with you being from Chicagoland and that you went to Iowa. But let's put you on the Vikings now. And J.J. McCarthy is struggling. And they signed Rodgers purely to be his backup. Like, hey, you're going to be the backup. What would happen in a locker room that had the future Pro Football Hall of Famer and 4-time MVP while J.J. McCarthy was struggling? Would there be players talking around the cribbage table about, we gotta play Rodgers. The kid's not ready. Would that be happening?
Oh yeah, yes. There's absolutely no doubt that would start happening, and why it would start happening is because Aaron would be in practice, absolutely torching the Minnesota defense and the scout team. So they would be seeing what he's doing in practice. Just dissecting Flores' defense in practice and doing very well in that. And then they would see McCarthy potentially, if he was struggling, doing what he was doing, and they'd be going, all right, like, why isn't he playing? And that would start, the chatter would start. And then when you have wide receivers like Jefferson and Addison that potentially aren't getting the touches that they're used to getting, that starts to pick up, right? Like those wideouts want the football. They want the ball. And if they see a quarterback that's able to deal it and still deal it at a high level and he's watching, those guys start to talk a little bit. And then the pressure starts to come onto the head coach about winning. And he's an offensive guy. And he knows Aaron's played in that system and he's thrived in that system. And a lot starts to, a lot of pressure starts to build. So yeah, that would be something that would most likely happen if they did bring Aaron in just a pure backup role and it didn't go well to start, for sure. Absolutely.
Steve, do you have anything you'd like to ask Bryan before we bid him farewell?
If he was advising Aaron Rodgers, what would he tell him to do? Or hold on, let me do that. If Aaron Rodgers asked you, because you're a longtime friend, you played for him, he respects your opinion, what would you tell him?
I would tell him, obviously, my first thing would be like, whatever you feel is best. But if you want my true opinion, I would say hold out for Minnesota. That would be what I would say. Because I don't think, for how I feel in all of it, listen, Pittsburgh has some pieces. They have a solid defense. I get it's a historic franchise and all that, but like, I'm just not totally sure how well it would go. Like, right? Like, I'm just not totally sold. The team's been, let's call it what it is. They've been right around 500, just above it the last how many years. I'm not sure. I get they brought in Metcalf, the wide receiver, and all. I get all that, but like, I guess I'm just not totally sold. And I get you bring him in and he does elevate as a quarterback, but like, is everything still there that you need? And I'm not totally sure. And I know at Minnesota, those pieces are there. It's a good defense. It's a good offensive line. It's a good wide receiver group. It's a good tight end. It's a good running back. It's a good play. Everything is there. It's an indoor stadium. It's against very familiar opponents, obviously. It's just a good fit. You look at what he would walk into and it's very well suited for him. So like, that would be my 2 cents for him, would be like, let's see if that situation unfolds for you, because I think he would be able to walk in there and be successful. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. And by the way, DK Metcalf, uber talented, fast, built like a, I guess brick, house. And Pickens is talented too. But to either of those guys, you're gonna have to go get that. You're gonna have to go get your tent here in a second. Do either of those guys strike you as precision route runners that Aaron Rodgers would enjoy throwing to. No matter how talented they are, they're going to drive him up the wall, I would predict. You want to join my club?
There's a good chance there'd be a couple back shoulders that would not be completed that he may not like. We'll just put it that there'd be a couple back shoulders that he'd be expecting that they should know that wouldn't happen, that he'd be a little upset about. I mean, if I had to take a guess. And listen, those guys are emotional players. We've seen it on the sideline from both of those guys, and Aaron obviously is an emotional guy too. He demands a lot about his wideouts. So I just don't know how it would play out. I just don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and it just seems, like I said, a better fit in Minnesota with what they have going on there and the team that they have.
All right, Brian, enjoy the rest of the day on dad duty. I hope Abby's hair turns out great, and thanks for stepping in. I know you're part of the rotation during the Tausch spring sabbatical, so we look forward to you joining us sometime next week. Thanks, buddy. Have a good day.
All right, guys, take it easy.
He is the great Bryan Bulaga, who we appreciate his visits every Wednesday. And, of course, you can hear him twice a week on the Homer Hour, including on Thursdays when I join the program and Homer turns the show over to me.